Alô? Alô? Bom dia a todos. Vamos iniciar a programação do terceiro Seminário Internacional de Educação e Engenharia. Eu queria chamar à mesa o professor José Carlos Quadrado, diretor da Escola Politécnica. E queria chamar o professor José Carlos Quadrado também, que vai dirigir a primeira mesa de debate. Queria agradecer a presença do professor Milligan. No, not now. After. E a professora Ksenia, que vieram nos prestigiar aqui com as apresentações e com os workshops. Obrigado. Depois, eu vou passar a palavra ao professor Piqueira para fazer a apresentação inicial da escola, a recepção, né? O professor Piqueira é o diretor da Escola Politécnica, então ele vai fazer uma...
Bom, senhoras e senhores, bom dia. Inicio cumprimentando o engenheiro Quadrado, que já é nosso companheiro aí de outras jornadas. Cumprimento meu chefe, José Roberto Cardoso, de quem fui vice-diretor, enquanto ele foi diretor dessa escola. Cumprimento a professora Zaitseva, é um prazer recebê-la aqui. Cumprimento também o professor Milligan, também é muito importante para a escola recebê-los. É fundamental, o problema da educação em engenharia no Brasil é talvez hoje um dos problemas centrais para a resolução das nossas principais crises. Embora ele não ocupe a imprensa todos os dias, embora todos os dias a imprensa se ocupe da previdência, da corrupção, etc., ela se esquece de que sem engenharia não haverá progresso. A engenharia brasileira precisa ser reformulada, o ensino de engenharia no Brasil precisa ser repensado. Para vocês terem uma ideia, no último exame do ENAD, mais de 60% dos examinados, dos formandos, tiraram nota menor que 3, o que é muito grave na formação dos engenheiros do país. E, como eu estava falando com o professor Milligan, é muito difícil conseguir no Brasil uma unidade para discussão. O Brasil é um país muito grande, de muitos estados, e cada estado acaba fazendo o seu modelo sem que haja uma integração entre esses diversos modelos. Basta a gente observar que nós temos um evento deste porte aqui em São Paulo, neste momento, e eu espero que as pessoas estejam assistindo por ITV. Mas é um evento de grande importância para a engenharia brasileira e que as escolas de engenharia, no mínimo de São Paulo, deveriam estar aqui participando dessa discussão. Então, eu agradeço muito a presença dos consultores internacionais que aqui estão. Eu espero que o trabalho seja de grande valia e espero que o Aquiles, o Cardoso, a Roseli, que estão sempre envolvidas nessa história do ensino de engenharia, continuem o seu trabalho, que a Escola Politécnica dará todo o apoio para que a engenharia no Brasil volte a ter a importância que merece, volte a ter a importância que lhe é devida para o nosso desenvolvimento. Muito obrigado e espero que vocês tenham um bom seminário.
Então, bom dia a todos. Bom dia a todos. Ainda estão dormindo vocês. Vamos tentar outra vez. Bom dia a todos. Está melhor assim. Assim fica melhor. Em primeiro lugar, o meu nome é Quadrado. Eu sou dos poucos que assumo que é Quadrado nesta sala. Pode haver outros, mas eu sempre é com muito gosto que estou nesta instituição e é também com muito gosto que estou no terceiro Seminário de Educação e Engenharia. Já estamos no terceiro, Aquiles, a Rosalia. Já chegámos ao terceiro. Já começa a fazer história. Com 3 anos não já caminha, já começa a correr para todos os lados. E, efetivamente, este terceiro Seminário de Educação e Engenharia foi desenhado para se enfocar num tema que hoje em dia, em termos globais, é de muita importância. Aliás, temos aqui o Dr. Piqueira, o diretor da Escola, precisamente, a quem agradeço naturalmente esta presença, precisamente porque se tornou claro que a acreditação é uma necessidade. Ainda que não encontremos os estudantes nas nossas escolas com t-shirts que digam acreditação ou morte, não deixa por isso de ser uma necessidade cada vez mais em termos de enquadramento das nossas instituições. Sem a acreditação internacional, cada um está alegremente fazendo o seu caminho, sem muitas vezes perceber as necessidades de globais. Sendo a USP e sendo a Poli um player assumidamente mundial, assumidamente global, o conhecer as necessidades de acreditação internacionais são algo que só nos pode ajudar, naturalmente, em crescimento institucional, mas também em crescimento dos próprios programas e perceber como a melhoria contínua pode, efetivamente, vir a ajudar-nos. Vejo que estão presentes na sala todos aqueles que são os grandes players de educação de engenharia neste país. Também uma referência ao Nival, que já não sendo o presidente da ABENJ, continua a ser uma das pessoas referentes durante muitos anos nesta instituição e sobre este tema, mas também dizendo que vamos ter hoje 2 pessoas que certamente nos vão ajudar muito nesta tarefa. Antes de começarmos a apresentação propriamente dita deles, gostava de dizer que já os conheço há bastante tempo. Bom, questões de idade há mais tempo o professor Milligan do que a professora Zaitseva, mas efetivamente são pessoas que em termos globais têm vindo a ajudar instituições em todos os países a perceberem e a melhorarem as suas potenciais em termos de acreditação. Claro que cada um deles também vem de pequenos países, dos Estados Unidos e da Rússia, são países que praticamente ninguém conhece, mas que efetivamente por isso mesmo também têm um impacto muito grande em termos globais. Não se compara ao impacto de Portugal, porque obviamente se não fosse Portugal o Brasil não existia, isso mostra que é muito mais importante, mas mesmo assim permite efetivamente perceber como as grandes nações do mundo que têm poderios tecnológicos e económicos estão preocupados também com este tema, estão preocupados em fazer esta ligação e em desenvolver este reconhecimento. Vamos ter ao longo deste seminário, nomeadamente hoje e amanhã, workshops, quer pela professora doutora Ksenia Zaitseva e do professor doutor Michael Milligan, que nos vão ajudar a perceber muito, no detalhe, aquilo que é a acreditação que eles fazem e como é que isso pode melhorar em cada uma das estruturas. Recentemente, falando com o presidente da ABENJ atual, o professor Vanderly Fava de Oliveira, com quem tive a oportunidade de estar a semana passada, ele comentou-me da necessidade de o Brasil assumir seriamente este tema. Ele não está hoje aqui porque está em São Paulo, mas teve que estar noutro evento, mas estará aqui nos próximos dias. E parte da discussão que nós tivemos foi precisamente como é que o Brasil vai dar um passo, quais são os próximos passos. E ficou claro que a ABENJ não pode dar um passo tão importante como este sem grandes instituições como a USP ajudarem este passo. E eu penso que aquilo que será a nossa responsabilidade nestes dias é, efetivamente, perceber daquilo que se faz em termos internacionais, o que é que se pode fazer no Brasil e o que é que a USP pode liderar, o que é que a ABENS pode liderar em termos brasileiros. Portanto, mais uma vez, muito obrigado por me convidarem a estar aqui presente. Também devo confessar que estava passando por aqui, o Aquiles me agarrou e disse, já que você está no Brasil, fica aqui e faz isto, mas que é sempre com muito gosto que estarei presente e vos possa apoiar, contem comigo. Muito obrigado a todos e desejo a todos uns 3 dias de muito bom trabalho e que daqui saiam novas ideias para a acreditação. Muito obrigado. I think now we need to... You do it. You use your...
Okay. Gostaria de chamar à mesa a professora Ksenia, por favor. E o professor Milligan. Obrigado, Piqueira. E agora eu passo a palavra ao professor Quadrado para dirigir essa sessão.
Muito obrigado.
Obrigado.
Bom, vamos seguir esta sessão. Infelizmente vamos ter que abandonar a língua de Camões, porque os nossos convidados não são fluentes na língua de Camões. Penso que ambos sabem dizer bom dia, o que já é muito agradável, mas não muito mais. So now we'll start and we continue this session in English. As I was explaining to our guests, it's not as good as Portuguese, but it's probably the one that we can use for today. First of all, let me welcome you two guys to here. I know you, both of you, now for some time, so I don't need that much introductions. I would like, however, to make the introduction from both of you. I have both of your CVs, which are huge. So if you allow me, I would do just a small presentation of your CVs. So Dr. Michael Milligan is the CEO from ABET, which is a non-profit organization which has over 3,600 programs has been accredited. That's a huge number, Mike. Basically, Dr. Michael Milligan is leading the team which is based in Baltimore, US, which involves more than 2,200 specialists making international accreditations, which is responsible for all the global aspects of ABET. ABET is the American Association for Engineering Accreditation. And basically, Dr. Milligan has worked in the aerospace corporation, developing new generation of environmental satellites. He also served for many years, I'm not going to say how many years, I don't believe how many years are here, as an official in the U.S. Air Force. So therefore, he served also 6 years as an associate professor also in the Academy of Air Force of the U.S. And, of course, he is a PhD in Texas, Austin, and he has been honored all around the world, and is quite a huge player in terms of engineering education around the world. Everybody knows about Dr. Michael Milligan. So please welcome Dr. Michael Milligan. On the other side, I have Dr. Ksenya Zaitseva. She's Russian. She is graduated from Tomsk Polytechnical in Russia. She is one of the Russian mathematicians as a base in itself. Of course, she's also a doctor. She's a PhD in pedagogical, focused on engineering education. She does not have many years of working experience at Dr. Michael Milligan. However, she's already many years of experience in terms of international management projects. She's the director of the accreditation agents from Russia. And she is, of course, very much involved worldwide in terms of accreditation and training of accredited staff. I don't have that many information around here, but probably you will complement it later on. So please also welcome Dr. Zaitseva. So today I was given a task And this task is actually to allow these two wonderful people to explain a little bit about the accreditation global-wise, in terms of US, in terms of Europe, because Russia, in terms of accreditation, is part of Europe. Well, also part of Russia is part of Europe, right, in itself. So, and after that, we'll have a small discussion among all of us to make sure that we understand all the concepts and so on. I do believe you both have presentations. Yes. So, Dr. Milligan, may I suggest you do your presentation from there? We probably will move there so we can see it better, okay?
Bom dia. Yeah, okay. Well, thank you very much, José Carlos, for that wonderful introduction. And I'm very delighted and happy that you've decided to invite me here. This is my first visit to Brazil. And I've traveled many other places, but I'm saving Brazil for this time. So thank you very much for that. What I thought I would do this I have a workshop tomorrow, and the workshop is intended to get into some details of how to go through the process of building a program that can undergo accreditation. But what I thought I would do this morning is just kind of give you an overview or highlight of why accreditation, I believe, is important, and the importance of quality assurance in education. So let me see how this works. Okay, works fine. So what I would like to do is just spend a few minutes talking about value. And I think that it's important to really understand and sort of internalize this whole idea of quality assurance. Because quite frankly, the universities, the programs are the ones that build the quality. All right? And it's a organization like ABET or AAER that does the quality assurance, that kind of verifies that indeed the institution has formal quality and built in, that they are following the process to ensure quality, and that is a sort of a recognition that one can present to an institution. So I totally believe that we're in the business of inspiring confidence in the institutions and the programs. That's important for the students. It's important for the faculty. I know in the United States it's very important for industry because they seek out students that have graduated from programs that are accredited, and I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. But I also think we have a big impact on helping impact the world. So I think you might be familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations. And I like to use this as an example because many times people will tell me, well, what difference does it make whether students go through programs that are accredited or not? And I can give them all the technical details of why that's important. But I think if you think in the bigger scheme, these kinds of issues are the reason you want your engineering graduates to be to come from programs that are preparing them, okay, to tackle these big problems. Now, there are many on here, and I would argue that engineers have a role to play in helping solve all of them. It's not that difficult to imagine how that could be, but certainly, you know, when I travel around the world, and you know, air quality is a big problem. It's a problem in the United States. It's a problem in India. It's a problem in South America. Everywhere. So how can we help solve those kinds of problems? Well, it's the engineers that are going to be coming out of programs like your own that will help solve these problems. And I think it's important not to lose the big picture. I also think this is a good example because students today are very concerned about social and issues that affect not just themselves, obviously, but you know, their country, their generation. And unfortunately, these are some of the things that the kind of the problems that their generation will be forced to address. And the National Academy in the United States has the grand challenges, very similar in many cases. But one that I'd like to point out is this one down here called Advancing Personal Learning. And this is really interesting because this whole field of assessing adult learning, educational, you know, is focused on that area because not all people learn the same way. Okay, people learn many different ways. And so understanding how to best get someone to learn to their maximum potential allows them to be more efficient, better qualified, and so on and so forth. So I'll talk more about this idea of personalized learning tomorrow in my workshop. In terms of why accreditation matters, you hear about the accreditors, ABET, AER, and others, and why is it important, and why are we so busy? You heard during the introduction over close to 4,000 programs are accredited. Why is that important? Well, this idea of making sure that students are prepared to enter the profession. They certainly can graduate from the university. They can be successful, have good grades, but what is the assurance that they have the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities that is expected of a student graduating today in 2017 or 2018 and so forth? So through this process of accreditation, through this review, we come on campus, we talk to your faculty, we look at materials, we talk to the students, we engage with your constituents, which is a fancy word for maybe like industry or the people that hire your graduates, right? We talk to them and make sure that you're producing graduates that are successful in meeting what their expectations are. Institutions are committed to improving the student's experience, and I think it's very easy for me to describe to you the value of this process to faculty, to students, to institutions. I have 2 children that are in university, and I have to pay the tuition, so it's important for me to understand that their programs are good. They're both engineering students, and so I want to make sure that they're being adequately prepared. Here you see some reasons maybe students would care about their programs being reviewed. Obviously, the quality choice. They want to make sure that the programs are high quality. There are many thousands of engineering programs in the world, and students have many choices, and they increase frequently. All the time they increase. So making sure that they have access to quality education, making sure the institution has this commitment. That's a big sign of quality institution, is their commitment to have quality processes. And then I believe also in the very end there about the employment opportunities, and I have something to share with you here in a moment that will highlight that, I think. What is the value to the institutions? Because establishing a process requires an investment. It requires investment of time, a lot of time, some money, resources in terms of that. You have to get teams together. You have to establish formal processes. You must document them. Okay? So there is a big commitment to this process. So why would the institution do it? I think this seal of approval, if you will, from the third party like ABET, AER, others, is important. And it demonstrates to the rest of the world that your institution is committed to quality. And I think that in itself is highly, highly valuable. There is some recognition or prestige, I say. I think you also can attract the best students and the best faculty. If they know that your institution is committed to quality, they want to be associated with that. They want to be affiliated with programs that are committed to quality. And a third-party recognition of quality is the highest standard that you can get. And then sometimes, depending upon where you are in the world, I know in the U.S. this is true, the funding that comes to institutions sometimes is dependent upon whether the programs are accredited or not. Okay? And this makes sense because, especially if you're going to be investing public funds in an institution, you want to be assured that those graduates are properly prepared when they finish. Okay, industry. Probably one of the biggest drivers in the whole education and quality assurance space is industry. Now, ABET, my organization, was founded 85 years ago, okay, so a long time ago, but it was founded by industry, and it was created because industry was not getting the kind of graduates that they wanted, okay? They would come out of university with certain degrees, but they didn't have a strong enough skill set to be really successful right away. So industry founded ABET with the intent of producing graduates that, again, are ready to enter the profession, meaning when they graduate, they can come in, get hired, then they can start to work effectively. Okay? So entering the profession is important. And they also now industry has this opportunity to influence education in a very large way, direct way. And I have here industry advisory groups. Most universities will have industry participate in their quality process. That's the feedback part, feedback, right? So the feedback from industry saying, yes, your graduates are doing really well in these areas, or perhaps they need more skills in a particular area, maybe public speaking or communications or maybe laboratory techniques or whatever it happens to be, okay? So industry feedback's important, and they have this opportunity to do that. The other thing I think is extremely important is I know that in my involvement with ABET over the past maybe 8 or 9 years, we have grown our international activities, and I have something to show you here shortly that will summarize that. But I know that industry now is global. It doesn't matter where the industry is headquartered. It could be in the U.S., it could be in Europe, it could be in South America, but nonetheless they have customers around the world. They want to hire people from around the world. So it's important that they can hire people of known quality, if you will. And so that's why we are so active, I believe, around the world, is because we provide that recognition of quality that universities have, then that local industry can hire. So really important. And again, it helps when they hire. Okay. So here is a snapshot of a computer screen. And I went to this website, Indeed, which is job searching. Okay, so if you want a job, maybe you go to Indeed, and then maybe type the word ABET here. Type that word ABET in there, and see what kind of return you'll get. And you'll get 3,462 jobs that have ABET somewhere in the description. Okay. Now, I like to use this example because it demonstrates the importance that industry places on quality assurance and ABET in this case, okay? And what it says in those job descriptions, it'll say that the student must have graduated from a program accredited by ABET or something like that. Preferred, required, some words like that. But this is a good example, and you can do this today, and the numbers will be different, but it'll still be a big number of the importance that industry places on graduates that come out of programs that are accredited. So again, that's just a quick example. This is a publication that came from the European Association for International Education back in July. And I happened to it caught my attention because what they're talking about are trends, okay? Trends in global education. So this is produced out of the United Kingdom, so it has a British view, but nonetheless, I think it's informative because if you look at the report, it says that these are the big trends facing global education, or that are happening in global education. And you'll see that there's lots of things up here that, national, how do you internationalize your programs to attract more students, et cetera, et cetera. But why I put this up is one of the top 10s is students really value quality, and they value value. They want to make sure that if they're investing their time and their money to enroll into a program, that they have a good educational experience, that they can be successful getting employed when they graduate, these kinds of things, okay? So it's not just me saying these things. You can see the students think. Okay, this is what they say. When seeking an institution abroad, students are focused on, quality and value, including cost, career prospects, which I think directly ties to this idea of industry requiring, right? Students come out of programs that are accredited. And the student experience, which can always get better, okay? Especially if you have some formal quality control mechanisms built in. The quality experience, the student's experience always gets better and better because that's by definition what the quality system's supposed to do. It's supposed to make the student's educational experience better. So for all these reasons, I think this is just an affirmation of this idea of quality. Okay, that leads to this idea. What about the around the world? What are we doing for our students around the world? I know the students perhaps here, you're being, this is a Brazilian institution. You have Brazilian students for the most part. You probably have some foreign exchange students and so forth from Portugal perhaps. But again, they're being prepared to be successful, maybe in industry in Brazil, maybe around the world. I don't know. But I think that, if you were to just kind of look at your programs that you're preparing students for, are you preparing them well to be successful? Because it doesn't matter, again, when I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter where the company's from, they are international. So again, here's a little bit of data, and all this tells you really is that if you look at the most in-demand professions, if I asked you that without even showing you this data, you would probably tell me, probably software engineers and computer scientists, and of course that's all right here, right? Health professionals, yeah, indeed. And psychologists down here too. So that's important if you're studying psychology. But nonetheless, big demand, right? And what kind of skills must they have? Okay, so here's some more data that I found, and here a couple of years ago to here, and of course things like solving problems, important, right? You want engineers to solve problems, you want them to be critical thinkers, but also important, okay? Creativity, people management, coordinating others, emotional intelligence, judgment, okay? Things that sometimes are described as what we call soft skills or professional skills, but we have an opportunity at the university level when they're progressing through their undergraduate programs in engineering or computing and whatnot. You have the ability to help them develop these kinds of skills. And indeed, if you look at the Washington Accord, which is an international agreement amongst accreditors, okay, they have things called graduate attributes, and these are the type of qualities that a graduate should have when they finish their program. And of course, they need to be able to know something about engineering, solve problems, do experiments, but there is this whole other set of skills, knowledge, abilities that students must have, okay? And environment and sustainability, that goes back to my earlier comments about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Ethics, extremely important. As a matter of fact, one of the most important aspects of making sure students make appropriate decisions, okay? And ethics is very challenging because it's not just about taking corruption in terms of money, but also making a design decision. How does it impact a population? What is the impact of a solution, okay? We can all think in a perfect world of some very elegant engineering solutions, but we don't think of the economic impact perhaps, or the environmental impact, or maybe the health impact of the peoples that will be affected. So critically important. Communication, a little bit, some information on project management, of course, lifelong learning. Many times you'll hear presentations like my own, and someone will tell you that the knowledge that a student receives today, half of it will be outdated in 5 years or something like that. Okay, so students have to learn and understand that they're just beginning when they graduate, right? They're just beginning this sort of this journey on learning and building their knowledge base. So let me talk about ABET for just one short minute. Again, we're all about instilling confidence and as we develop these students for a global workforce. So again, people would come to your program if it's ABET accredited and they have confidence that the students are prepared. The students have confidence that they have a good experience. Again, industry can hire, et cetera, et cetera. And so I just have a couple slides that I wanted to share with you about how do we engage globally to address these challenges. All right? We have understandings with a number of other accreditors, and this allows us to participate with one another's activities and learn. As a matter of fact, last week I went to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario with our friends from Engineers Canada, and I sat as one of the team members as an observer and to understand how they go through their process. I'm happy to say 80% of it was identical to what we do, which, since we're in the Washington Accord, is important. But I learned a lot. I took 5 or 6 things away, some of the activities that they did during their process that I'd like to bring back maybe and incorporate into ABET. And so we have these understandings with many accreditors. I mentioned briefly the Washington Accord. We have other agreements in engineering and also in computing. Same reason. Let's bring up this quality of education around the world through these agreements. We accredit programs, of course, and then we have partnerships with global organizations. Accrediting programs, this is an idea of what our numbers look like inside and outside the U.S. So you can see a significant number outside the U.S. now. Again, these are typically areas where there's, in most areas where organic accrediting agency available to do that kind of work, or the institutions want to internationalize their programs in a more direct way, so they like to get multiple agencies to accredit their programs, and that happens frequently. I wanted to point out that what's important about what we do, okay, and this idea of non-governmental, because you don't want a Ministry of Education or Department of Education to influence these decisions that come down about quality. So has to be non-governmental, fair in peer review. Our system only uses engineers and computer scientists to do our work. So if you have a civil engineering program, a civil engineering program evaluator comes to look at your program. And I think it's really important because they know better than a bureaucrat, for a better description, how your program works. It's voluntary always, no matter where you are around the world. It's always voluntary process. And self-assessment, that's the most important part. You reflect on your own program. You discover many things that perhaps you would have not had the opportunity to do if you hadn't gone through the process, and that in itself provides a lot of the value. Lots of collaboration informally with different organizations around the world, and so always active, helping these organizations help their programs or their students. We have a lot of resources. I just put this up because we have a symposium, we have workshops and so forth to help faculty develop. We have a big symposium every year, and I'm going to use this opportunity to advertise in San Diego, California in April. And we have this symposium that brings together faculty and administrators and others that are interested in improving the quality of education. And this is really probably the best benefit to faculty because they learn from one another. It's a peer-to-peer sharing opportunity for programs to talk about how they do the assessment and so forth. So with that, I think I'm finished. Oh, yes, and I'll leave this here. Yes, absolutely.
So, thank you very much, Michael. It was a great presentation as always. So I would like to now open the floor for some questions. So feel free to ask some questions, Michael. We'll have, after this question, we'll have a break, and after the break, Dr. Zaitseva will make their presentation, and at the end we'll do a round table. But now some pressing questions that you have for Michael's presentation. Wait. We have been recorded, José.
I would like to ask you if the ranking and the accreditation, if there is any conflict.
With rank, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. With ranking, well, it depends on no, there's no conflict, but it's interesting because in the North American, in the United States, there's a service, U.S. News, which is a publication, does rankings, and it's referred to by many, especially if you're on the list, then everybody says, yeah, we're ranked, right? But I know in some of the engineering, they'd only rank programs that are accredited. So they don't get on the list unless they're accredited, okay? And primarily, it makes it easier for U.S. News because that's that first level of quality control. And if they don't make, if they're not accredited, then they don't bother with them and just go on to the next list. So there's no conflict. I think it's complementary. And I also think that it elevates your recognition and your stature, especially globally, because it's a recognition of quality and your commitment to quality, which is probably the more important part.
Do you have no ranking at ABET?
Okay, very good question. Do we rank programs at ABET? The answer is no. And if you go to the ABET website, just like you will the other accreditors, I believe, you go to the ABET website, you can search on programs, and the information that you'll get is if the program is accredited, okay, and what is the duration, the length of time, okay, typically 6 years for most programs, when they're up for their next accreditation, and then also which of the agreements, Washington Accord, Sydney Accord, which ones are they recognized by. But there's no ranking. It's too difficult to do for us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
We would like to, excuse me, my name is Ilka. I'm from the linguistics area, so I'm an alien here. But we would like to know about the president of China. How is China about the accreditation programs?
China, a very large country with many engineering programs, and they are approaching accreditation directly. They have the Chinese Association for Science and Technology, which is a broader group under which they have an accrediting agency, okay? And they are accrediting programs actively. They are new members to the Washington Accord, just a few years now. We also accredit programs in China at their invitation because they have so many. I think the last time that I saw numbers, I think they were approximately just a few percentages of their programs were accredited by CAST because it's new. It's new to China. So they have a lot of work to do because they have a lot of programs. So they're building up their evaluator base. They are aggressively seeking programs to accredit. And I'd also say we have an agreement with them also, and we are helping to train their trainers. So we've invited them to come and witness how we do our training for our evaluators. Then they are going back to China and then developing their own system, but based on sort of the approach that we use. Because every country is different.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there's another question there. Or not? No, here.
Hi, my name is Stella. I'm an undergrad student from Poly. I'd like to know, do you find any resistance from any other universities like ours that is focused on technical skills? And I think for the 21st century we have to make the shift to providing more professional skills, as I say, to the students. But I don't know. I think faculty members would have a certain resistance to shift, from technical to professional.
Well, yes. Let me just answer your question broadly, yes, but from different points of view. One of the beauties of the Washington Accord is that each country is different, okay, and traditionally each country has stressed different aspects of education. So, in some countries, just technical, right? Some countries, it's a mix of technical and professional. But the Washington Accord requires that you inject more professional skills, and I think in the long run, it's much more effective for students because you could have the most brilliant student in the world, but if that person can't communicate their ideas effectively, then it's not very, very useful. Now, faculty is another story, okay? And I would say that I shouldn't say most, that's not fair, but in many institutions, especially those that are very, very considered elite institutions, okay, feel that their contribution to that university is because of their technical experience and their demonstrated scholarly activities or their research, etc. And they don't believe that they are at the university that they should worry about involving themselves in assessment or continuous improvement. So there's some resistance and reluctance, okay? But I think I've always believed that leadership is the most important aspect in many areas, and certainly in education. Very strong leadership at the provost level, at the rector level, at the dean level, saying, we have to focus some of our time on formal quality because if we don't, it's too easy not to pay attention to it and to get too consumed by your technical research or, writing grants for research funding and so forth. So even the best schools, I think, recognize, yes, that's important, and as a result, are committed to doing it. But part of the faculty, one of the things that we do is this training, and I think that really relieves a lot of anxiety and stress associated with programs becoming accredited because they understand that, it's not that difficult. We have almost 4,000 programs, so people know how to do it. It's just a matter of getting into that mode. And once you're in that mode, I think it becomes much easier. It's a really good question, though, very relevant question.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, Achilles, of course, you're the boss.
In Mercosul, we have an accreditation program that's called Arcosul.
Yes.
I think that this program have problems to grow because we have problems with the councils that regulate the professional activity in Brazil and the other countries in South America. My question is about how to join to the ABET or the European accreditation of engineering schools. With the Mercosul can join this this format of accreditation, international accreditation. And another question is about the problem with the regulated professional market councils. In Brazil, we have problem. I don't know if in US or in Europe you have problems of the accreditation programs and the councils that regulate the profession. That is a big interest from the students to work in other countries, but we need the agree of the councils that regulate the profession.
Achilles, if I may, I would ask Dr. Milligan to actually...
Do you understand my...
yes, I think he did.
But I can answer the first question, I think. The first question, yeah. And so the process, if you were interested in, and I would say it's probably, in terms of seeking accreditation, I can tell you what our process is, but I would think it's very similar, no matter where you go. But there's two things that we require. One is that you have a process in place, a continuous improvement process in place, and that, you would demonstrate that through some initial verification, and most importantly, that we're welcome wherever we go. So what I mean by that is we wouldn't want to come to Brazil, for example, accredit a program if there was some other concerns from other agencies in this area that it's not appropriate to do that. And so we have a formal process where we have you as the institution would get a sign-off, if you will, from either the Ministry of Education or somebody that would be responsible in an area like ourselves, so that when we come here, everybody is happy,
Okay.
Just to complement something what Michael said, I think this is part of what we can discuss later on after the two presentations.
Okay.
The idea of Arcosur and how it actually involves. It probably will take more than 15 minutes of answering just all of that, so probably we'll leave that, okay?
Okay.
So last question.
Okay. Hi, my name is Simone, Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. And my questions about the degree engineers, okay? And you showed the graphic and the colors blue, red. Do you remember this? If necessary, the engineers are your country or the world?
That was all over the world.
World.
Yeah, some colors. The blue was in Europe.
The blue, okay.
Yeah, that represents countries. So those are a lot of European countries.
Okay, Asia, South America. Okay.
Yes.
In the numbers, do you have the numbers if necessary?
Well, I would go back. The report is referenced in the bottom in that web link.
Okay. No, for example, in South America, okay?
Yes.
The numbers, engineer, if necessary, are this country, our country, 10,000, 10...
I don't have those raw numbers. No, I do not. Now, I don't. If we look at the report, it could very well be there. Because they did take those numbers and talk about them in some specificity. But I can't. I don't know if they talked about Brazil specifically or not. It's possible, but.
the USA, do you know?
The numbers of engineers.
Yes.
The needs for engineers.
Oh, the needs. Well, yeah, the needs are great. Well, the needs are great. I mean, if a really good example. I know this just recently because we're embarked on a project in the whole area of cybersecurity, and I know for every graduate, there's 10 jobs. There's a need for 10 people. 10 jobs. So that's pretty significant, and that's similar in software, all software. And software engineering.
Okay.
And then the engineering specifically depends on the speciality.
Yes.
Okay. So I think maybe electrical computer at high demand, maybe mining engineer not so much, that type of thing. Petroleum
in the
engineering,
USA, it's the university reference university. It's a MIT, Harvard. Okay. But it's technology and the other areas, engineer. It's complicated because in.
It is very complicated, and we have engineering. We have 4-year engineering technology.
Yes.
The 2-year engineering technology is easier because that's more like technician, but the 4-year technologist versus the 4-year engineer, Washington, Sydney Accord is complicated.
Yes. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simone. Are we okay? Okay. So thank you very much, Michael.
So I'll go down.
We will now take a break. Okay. Please make sure you come after the break. Okay, I'm counting all of you, so I want to see all of you again here after the break. And we'll continue then with Dr. Zaitseva and with the round table. Thank you very much. Where's the direction for the coffee break? Okay, that side. Now you can applaud now. Okay, thank you. Let's go.
Agora ajudou muito. Não, porque tem trabalho que os caras querem fazer no Brasil, que é um modelo não americano, é um modelo indiano. Indiano. Deve ser bom. Olá.
Olá, tudo bom? Prazer, Simone, tudo bom?
Rivaldo. Eles estão fazendo isso aqui, querem fazer no Brasil.
Do que é o modelo indiano de...
O modelo de acreditação.
De acreditação.
Aí os
indianos são bons. Maravilhoso. Sou fã deles, né? O modelo indiano, não demorando na Índia, mas o modelo indiano de tecnologia, de investimento na educação tecnológica, eu sou fã.
Agora, uma coisa que poderia ter ficado só falta competências. Não é skill, mas é ability ou skill. Eu não sei se é competência. Tudo bem, meu amigo. Eu estava ali, pedindo engarrafamento
de conceito, né?
Direto, não é? Mas só para mas eu consegui buscar, mas ela ficou aqui ajudando. Mais outra parte. Tudo bem. Estou falando para ela.
Well, that's why the demand is so high, because it's easy and easy to implement. So they have many now.
Bom, vamos então recomeçar esta sessão, agora falando em português enquanto estamos aqui à espera. So, as we agreed, now for the second part of this presentation, I'd like to ask Dr. Zaitseva, so you could please have the floor, and after that we'll have the round table.
Here, yes. Okay. Bom dia. Okay. Okay, now it's better. Thank you for keeping being here. Thank you, José Carlos, that you were so rigorous, and despite of the very good weather outside, you are still here in the room, and we will spend some more time talking about the accreditation. In contrary to Dr. Michael Milligan, it is not my first time here in Brazil, and also I'm the second time here in São Paulo, and I really love your city. So thank you for inviting and for giving this opportunity to be here with you. Also, there is a little secret that José Carlos hasn't announced to you in the introduction. I will do all my presentations in English because this is what we agreed from the very beginning. But if it would be easy for you to talk Spanish or Russian, you're always welcome. But also, I do understand Portuguese. I cannot reply you immediately in Portuguese. I can reply you only in Spanish, but I do understand Portuguese. So if in those moments that we will be communicating, especially after lunch session in the workshop, feel free if you have any questions, and it is easier for you because I understand that people could have different English skills. So I hope you can find the best way. So, as I already told, I'm coming from Russia, from the Association for Engineering Education of Russia. My background is in mathematics and in international management. And here I'm just in one role, that is the director of the Accreditation Center of the Association for Engineering Education of Russia, that also does the international accreditation, professional accreditation of engineering programs, as well as EBEDU. We are the same signatories of Washington Accord and of the EURACE system, that is European one. And this is a difference, and we agreed that we will talk in these 2 days. I will focus more on the European system, while Michael will talk about Washington Accord and those rules. Although it is for our association the same, so our criteria and our procedure, they are in accordance and in correspondence to the both systems. But also in terms of the academic career, I'm an associate professor of the Tomsk Polytechnic University, that is one of the leading universities in Russia, now also playing quite an important role in the international arena. And just for you to understand where I'm coming from, actually, because my office is, the head office of association is in Moscow, but the president's office is in Tomsk. So I just want you to show that long trip that I had. And you can... Oi? No, I did something wrong. Yeah, so this is Tomsk. This is Siberia. This is the central... Well, I'm also coming from south, but south of Siberia. And so I had this long trip to São Paulo, but thank you for our engineers. Now it is possible, and it is not so time-consuming. Just less than 1 day, I would say. Yeah. And now in Tomsk, it is winter. So this is some of images that you can imagine we have. This is the Trans-Siberian train, some of the normal images, but do not be afraid, because when it is summer, we have these beautiful houses, very green, and it could be like 30 degrees above zero. So that is why it is normal temperature for me here that in São Paulo. Yeah. And now some more words about the association, because I understand that you are not aware what does it mean, Association for Engineering Education of Russia, where is this lady coming from. So just a few words, that we are a non-governmental organization with 25 years of existence, and this is a big organization that covers 64 districts of Russia. So we have 64 regional departments that are based on the leading technical universities throughout the whole country. And our country is also big, really big, and it is very important for us to keep good links with our academic community and professional community of engineers. The mission of association, in short words, is the improvement, enhancement, and contribution to the development of engineering education and engineering profession in Russia and worldwide. So this is a difference of our association comparing with other accreditation bodies, because we are not just an agency, but we are the Association for Engineering Education of Russia. It means that in our structure we have the accreditation center that I'm heading now, but also we have other activities and other responsibilities. So it is about international conference and seminars and workshops. Of course, all of them are dedicated to the problems of engineering education. Also trainings, and when we talk about trainings, it is the training of program evaluators or experts in accreditation. I will talk a bit more about that in a few minutes, and different workshops on active learning, on learning tools. So all these topics that are quite urgent, as you can see, not only in Russia or in Brazil, it is worldwide. Also, we do a lot of research in the field of engineering education, not engineering specifics, but education. And we have our journal that we are publishing that is called Engineering Education of the IER. Now we are under review for being included in Scopus database. So if you are interested in that, you can just search in the website that we have. This journal has English and Russian versions available. So, and it is always very important for us to get your ideas and your papers, sharing the experiences. Talking about our international cooperation, as I told, we are the full members of the European Network for Accreditation of Engineering Education. Also, we are the full members or full signatories of the Washington Accord that makes part of the International Engineering Alliance, the EPEC Register of Professional Engineers, EPQN, that is for the Asian part in engineering education, IFES, I hope that you all know this organization quite well. We have the partnership agreement, and we are really cooperating a lot with LACSEI. So, and we have a good story of cooperation with José Carlos personally, and with the organization that he is now the president of. CEFI is the European Association for Engineering Education, and well, there are several more, but so this is just to give you an idea that although we are so far away from some of the countries, it doesn't mean that we cannot cooperate actively, and I hope that Brazil also can do the same in terms of quality assurance and engineering education improvement. Also, another part of our activities deals with international projects, mostly supported by national government, but also with the support of the European Commission. These were the projects under program Tempus that is now not working anymore because it was transferred and transmitted to the Erasmus Plus. And I hope that also you are aware that Brazil is now have all the rights to participate in this kind of cooperation under Erasmus Plus program, and we can also talk about that a bit more. But as I mentioned, in the list of activities that we have, one of the most important still remains the accreditation, international accreditation of engineering educational programs. And when we talk about accreditation, it is very important to draw your attention that we are talking about accreditation of engineering programs. So we are not accrediting any other type of programs in other fields if it is not engineering and technology. And we are not talking about the institutional accreditation. We are talking about the program level of accreditation. And the key characteristics of this kind of accreditation is independent, international, voluntary, and professional. I will just give you some elements of that in order to give more awareness. What does it mean? When we talk about international professional accreditation, it is always very important to be sure that it is independent. If this accreditation is not independent, and if the agency or the accreditation body is not independent, fully independent from the government or from other institutions, it could be a problem for you to recognize the results of accreditation. That is why, just a short story from the very beginning, in 1992, we had the institutional membership, and one of the members, one of the members was the Ministry of Education and Research of Russian Federation, and we were quite proud of it because we were in very good contacts with them. But this cost us a problem of being recognized and of being involved in the international accreditation, namely Washington Accord, because following the rules, you have to be totally independent. So it took us some time, and we even decided that we will change our status, and we are not more. So for many years already, the organization with institutional membership, we have individual members. So there is no institution in the world, in Russia, that pays us any fees, and not any links into, as members with the government or with the Ministry of Education and Research of Russian Federation. That was very, very important. Then absence of institutional members of fees and strict rules to avoid conflict of interests. In all procedures of accreditation, of international accreditation, it is very important to follow these rules. So, for example, when you have the peers that come to the audit of educational program to a certain institution, this peer could not be a graduate of this institution following our rules. Or this peer could not have contracts with this institution for the last 5 years at least. So we need to be sure that he will not be doing a favor to this institution because of some reasons. That is why, even following the procedure, all the peers, all the evaluators or experts, they sign the paper that shows the absence of conflict of interest. Talking about the international part, as I already mentioned, when we're talking about IER accreditation, it means that it is recognized. And in our case, in case of Russian Accreditation Center, we have like a benefit because we are simultaneously the members, full members of the Washington Accord and of the European system, that is EURACE label. It means that when we accredit anywhere in the world, it could be recognized. Because following the Washington Accord rules, your accreditation is recognized only when it is done in your jurisdiction. Once it is out of your jurisdiction, it is recognized only by your country and not the others. Just for you as an example, imagine that Singapore will go to accredit to India. This will be recognized only by Singapore. It will be not recognized by Russia, it will not be recognized by United States, Canada, and all the other 19 members of the Washington Accord. This is very strict rule, and we follow it as well. But this is the difference with the European system of accreditation, that there it permits you, when you're accrediting out of your jurisdiction, out of your country, it will be recognized. So France, when it goes to accredit to Vietnam, this accreditation of Vietnamese programs will be recognized by all the members of the INAI, of the EURACE system, by 17 countries. So this is the difference, and it doesn't mean it is better or worse. So it is just the fact. When we're talking about voluntary, it is also very important. It depends on different countries, but in the European countries and in Russian Federation as well, the professional independent accreditation of engineering programs is a voluntary process. Nobody forces the higher education institution to get this accreditation. We do have public institutional accreditation that I imagine all of the countries have. This is like a licensing. This is like a permission for a higher education institution to run educational programs and to award their diplomas at the end. But what is the difference here? What is the difference here is first, what I made? No. Yeah. That the object is the higher education institution when we're talking about the public accreditation or governmental accreditation. And in terms of professional accreditation, this is always an educational program. So first of all, the level is different. Then the requirement. This is compulsory, and I almost sure that in all countries all over the world, the institutional governmental accreditation is compulsory. In professional accreditation and international is voluntary. So this is the management of the university, this is the faculty of the university that takes the decision that for some reasons, and we will talk about that later, it is important for them to get this international recognition of high quality of their educational programs. But the most interesting part comes here, that just for you to understand what is the difference from our practice, it is time that is dedicated for the accreditation and for the quality monitoring of each educational program. When we are talking about the institutional accreditation, imagine that there are 20 people, 20 persons, experts, that come to your higher education institution, and they work there for 3 days, and the normal day is like 8 hours, working hours, but you have like 30 programs at least that they will monitor. It means that for each program, they will just dedicate 16 working hours. And when we're talking about professional accreditation and time dedicated, persons per hour, we can probably have 4 people, 4 peers that will come to the audit. They will also work for 3 days, the same 8 hours, but they will be evaluating, they will be monitoring only one educational program. It means they will be like 96 hours focusing all their efforts and all their competence in evaluation to this educational program. So afterwards, what is important is not the certificate of accreditation, but the procedure itself, and the quality assurance culture that starts to develop and arises at the higher education institution. Because to prepare, even to prepare for this kind of accreditation is a very hard task. And once you are successful, you get a lot of feedback. And even if you fail, but it it happens sometimes. You can fail in terms of non-accredit, or you can fail in terms of the number of years, the length of the accreditation that is given. You get very, very valuable recommendations and feedback from the international experts on how to improve your educational program, on how to improve the educational processes, and many, many more. This is also an important part, and it doesn't mean what system we are talking about. It is just the difference of the approaches of the institutional accreditation and professional accreditation of the educational program. That normally we have the focus at the institutional level on resources. So the experts come and they want to see whether you have enough space, whether you have enough equipment, whether you have enough faculty to provide this educational program. So this is the most important part for them, and we understand that, because if not, you cannot be called a higher education institution and you cannot award the degrees of the tertiary level. And when we are talking about professional accreditation, this is the focus. We are dealing more with the departments, well, it is written here in Spanish, with the departments, with the program level and outcome-based approach. So we try to evaluate the results and the outcomes of each educational program. In terms of research a bit, but more about the graduates, about the professional competence, about the soft skills of these students, graduates, their connections with the industry, all very detailed processes. Some more information about professional. As you remember, I told you it is independent, voluntary, international, and now professional. When we talk about the expert teams that are nominated and then come to the on-site visit within the audit of the educational program, there are, from our experience, normally these are 3 academic representatives. One of them, at least, should be a very competent person in the specific field of this engineering educational program. If we are crediting a program in chemical engineering, an aerospace peer would not be appropriate there. So we always take care of that, and we need to be sure that there is at least one person who knows specifically the field. Then the others, the chair, for example, could be, on contrary, a person who has very broad view and open-mindedness about the educational process. It is of the level of the head of department, dean, vice rector. So the person who could evaluate and measure the educational process at different levels. Also, we have one industry representative, because we want to take into account the interests of all the stakeholders. And industry and labor market representatives are one of the main stakeholders in the process. And of course, they're all high qualified and they follow the code of ethics. There is a code of ethics that exists for these experts, and of course, no conflict of interest. And another part about the professionalism of accreditation is that accreditation is done against criteria consistent. Well, in case of Russia, we show you that these are federal education standards that we have, professional standards that also exist in our jurisdiction, and here comes the international part. These are International Engineering Alliance graduate attributes, in our case of Washington Accord level, and EURAS framework standards. So all the criteria and all the procedure are consistent with these requirements. This is the normal procedure of the accreditation process. And just to let you know that this is not like I decided that tomorrow we apply for accreditation and in 3 months I want to see the result. Unfortunately or fortunately, it is not like that. It is quite time-consuming process, and normally it takes about 12 months from the very beginning to the end. Of course, it depends on the higher education institution, on its experience, but because probably they are already quite experienced, they have a lot of programs that were accredited, and it is easier for them to pass some of the stages, one of which is self-evaluation. Normally this is the most time-consuming part for the higher education institution when they're preparing the self-study report. Well, here is the a draft picture for what are the processes in the accreditation done by the university and by the agency. As you can see, this is two-flow two-flow directions, and we have also an opportunity for higher education institutions to make an appeal if they are not satisfied with the result of the audit evaluation. So if there were some errors, or if something from their opinion was not done correctly, it is very important in following the procedures of the accreditation to get the feedback from the university before the final decision is made. And almost finalizing this part of my presentation, it is a very important part of our activities, as I mentioned in the very beginning, training of experts. And we have experts or participants coming from different fields. This could be representatives of academic community. Normally they are 70%. Industry representatives, because they also afterward make part of the evaluation teams, and representatives of the management and administrative staff, or the other accreditation agencies. So it was a big pleasure for us, for example, when we did one of the trainings that we have EBIT experts participating in our training. So as Michael already mentioned, we always try to share our experiences and to know more from each other, so to get more information and to get more competencies from each other. The normal duration of such training is like 3 days. It is a very systematic or holistic approach when we want to make our future experts being really competent, and we just push them to be in the real conditions. So this is very tough work, and we want them to work hard within these 3 days. They will not be sitting as you do now. They will be really working in teams, making a lot of tasks, and then reporting, and that's why the learning outcomes are different. From the one hand, participants become aware of the accreditation procedure and criteria, and will be able to prepare educational programs at their home universities. So once they had this training, it helps and facilitates the preparation of the educational program for future accreditation. But from the other hand, participants who successfully complete all training tasks are awarded, in our case, the IER certificate, and are nominated the title of expert candidate. What does it mean, expert candidate? We know that this person was trained and he was successful in training, but we haven't seen him in practice, and we cannot say that you immediately can start the accreditation process as a peer, as an evaluator. That is why, after participation in on-site accreditation visit as audit team member or as an observer, this person could become active expert, and then he is listed in our database of experts. And in case of the URA system, it is always also now can be used by other European agencies if they need these experts in that country. Here you can see that for the period of the last 2 years, we had 15 training seminars in different cities of Russia. There are many of them, and in Central Asia for the Russian-speaking experts, but also we had 3 training seminars for international experts that took place in San Jose, Costa Rica, in Boca Raton in Florida, USA, and in Pereira, Colombia. Because our idea is to create a pool of experts in these countries who are now interested in international accreditation, and to involve them and to engage them in the accreditation processes, because we know that cultural aspects and multicultural management is always very important. And if we send here or wherever just experts from the other country, they will be like aliens. So they do not know the peculiarities, they do not know the laws, they do not know even the culture of this country. That is why, in our opinion, and the top management of IER supports it continuously, it is important to have a pool of experts from the countries. Yeah, so in the forthcoming trainings that we have now scheduled, it is in Chile, Colombia, and Ecuador. That will be in January, and in Peru in July of the next year. And the database of IER experts is now more than 400 people. We have more that are not so active, but I'm talking only about the active ones. So these are 150 active experts that normally participate in the accreditations, and 250 expert candidates, those who will, after some period of time, can become the active experts. Well, I'm quite short now, and José Carlos just gives me a sign that I need to stop here, but we will have the after-lunch session, and I will be very happy if you will attend it, and there we will follow our work, and we will talk more about the benefits. Unfortunately, I'm out of time now, so I will just skip that. Yes. Obrigada.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zaitseva. It was quite interesting, your presentation. Now I'd like to open the floor for some questions. And while we do it, can I ask you, Michael, so you could join us? Then we'll start continuously into the round table. So any questions? We have the microphone there. Please not all at the same time.
Okay.
One question. As you already understood, you can say it in any language. Actually, I know Dr. Zaitseva, she also speaks French, German, besides English, Russian, Spanish, and understands Portuguese. So basically, can cover almost all languages.
Okay, good morning. We are trying to speak in Russian.
Very good.
So, regarding the accreditation process, so this is for the education of engineering and for analyzing the infrastructure and curriculum and syllables, pedagogical organization. We would like to know, you were wondering here if there are partial evaluations for the students so they can follow the process and they can be maybe guided in acting up better, or I don't know if I was clear.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think so.
Yes, you can hear me? No.
Acho que está desligado.
Use it. Can use this one.
Thank you for the question. In terms of involving students in the accreditation process and where do they appear? First of all, in the accreditation process, we always evaluate the competencies. So we need to be sure, and this is one of the criteria, that is the preparedness for professional activity, that all the graduates of the educational programs have achieved the learning outcomes and the program objectives. And when we are talking about learning outcomes, we are evaluating the competence that they could achieve within the educational process. And when we are talking about the program objectives, they are evaluated only after 3-5 years after graduating. Also, in the European system, now it is a motion to involve even students as peers in the accreditation process. So one of the bodies that is called ICAR, that has the register of high qualified accreditation agencies in Europe, they pushes the accreditation bodies to involve students as peers, because they say that it is important to know the opinion of the students as evaluators. We had this kind of approach as pilot in 2 accreditations for the moment, but, and Michael will, I think, agree with me that it is for every international accreditation process that you need to have an interview or a session of questions with your students, with the students particular of this educational program. Normally we ask that students from different courses, from different years come, and this is very important to keep it confidential, this kind of conversation. That is why it is strictly prohibited for the faculty members or for professors to be in the room. And we have a set of questions. We try to make this conversation as less formal as possible, because students sometimes are a bit afraid of sharing their ideas. And we ask them some questions about whether they are satisfied with the educational program, what problems they face. And for us it is important to find evidences in their replies of what was mentioned in self-study report and what the faculty members and top managers say us about the educational program and educational process. And also it is very important to be sure, and it is one of the criteria of the accreditation, international accreditation, that there is a permanent feedback, like a system of feedback with your students, with your professors, and with graduates, and with the industry. So all stakeholders should keep in touch with the educational program, and sometimes they show us that, the higher education institution, they show us that, well, we have these questionnaires and we ask the students to fill them in, but the question that the peer will ask, are these results used somehow afterwards for improvement of the educational program? Because this is the most important. We need to be sure that there is a constant improvement and updating of the educational program based not only on the opinion of the educational program managers, but of the all stakeholders. So yes, students are totally involved in the accreditation process, and they play a very important role in that.
So you talk involve the students, the professionals, okay, and the teachers. Teachers too?
Yes, teachers as well.
Too. And how? And the teachers in this process?
So teachers participate. They participate in 2 roles. First of all, some of them could be nominated in the team from the higher education institution who prepares the program for accreditation.
Okay.
This is a very tough task.
Okay.
And then we always have an interview with the professors of this educational program about everything, about their satisfaction, about the educational technologies, about the learning techniques that they use, about the links with the
infrastructure.
Yeah, and this is a certain criteria also. In our case, it is the 4th one, faculty, where we evaluate how professional, how competent is the faculty of this educational program.
Okay.
To provide a high quality of competence for future graduates and for the students.
This is a questionnaire or
no? It is. We ask the higher education institution to prepare the self-assessment report, and they have to outline a lot of information about their faculty members, even short CVs about these faculty members. Also, in the European system, there is a big focus on the competence in terms of PhD among the professors, because we need to know that the share of the professors who has the PhD degree is quite high. For the master program, it could be more than 60% of the faculty members that need to have this PhD. We want to see that faculty members are involved in research activities, but we also want to see that the higher education institution and management of the university provides opportunities for the members of the faculty for continuous improvement. So they participate in conferences, they publish their papers, they have professional development courses at industry or internship. So this is always taken into account, because this is one of the sources for us to get evidences that the educational program is run in a high level.
Okay. All this feedback and the professional, the students, teachers, everything. Okay, and you organize this, and next step. Why the next step?
The next step is that we have the certain criteria that we need to evaluate, and our experts have special forms when they are evaluating, and they have to write down whether this criteria is fully met, or if there are some details or some elements that need improvements, but still the criteria is completed.
Okay.
And or if this criteria is totally under completion, so they cannot achieve this. And this will influence directly to the final decision on accreditation, non-accreditation, or the duration, so the length or the period that we will accredit this program.
Okay.
If one of the criteria is totally not met, the program could not be accredited.
Okay.
This is very, very important.
Yes.
Just one.
Just one.
But it doesn't mean that all the higher education institutions have the same level, and we need to see that they meet the criteria at a certain level. Some of them could be higher.
Okay.
But we have like a measure. Yeah,
Understand.
scale.
Understand. Thank you so much.
Sorry?
I would like to talk about money. Yes, I would like to know the financial support for the accreditation board. I think you need money for all activity. Normally the institution pay for it,
Yes.
and also the professional, even in a bit, or not?
The accreditation of educational programs is, so we do not pay for accreditation or for the certificate. This is very important, no? Because sometimes people have this in mind. Once we pay, we have the certificate. So this is not the case because we want to evaluate the procedure. That is why when answering this question, I would say that the institutions are paying for the accreditation procedure. That would be more polite and more in correspondence with the rules that we have. And each accreditation agency has their right to establish the cost. So I cannot now tell what are the costs of other agencies. I know mine, and it also depends because this is the cost for the accreditation process that is equal for any program in the world, in our case. But then also the higher education institution has the costs of providing the presence of these 3 peers and the on-site audit visit. So this is one cost apart from the accreditation procedure. But yes, they pay. And it depends because sometimes there are, in some countries, governmental support because they want their educational programs to be recognized internationally. Sometimes this is industry that is also interested in that and supports. Sometimes it is just the funds, the internal funds of the higher education institution. But also in the higher education institutions, not all the programs are applying for accreditation. So they're really analyzing, evaluating which programs are quite ready for this kind of evaluation and which programs really need it. Normally these are the programs that want to be as active as possible in the international contexts. So if your program is very specific and you are looking only to work with the local industry, local authorities and whatever, probably this is still not the moment to apply. But so the costs are supported by the higher education institution, and they are different.
What about EBIT?
Let me then start. Thank you very much, José Carlos. Then I'm start now the round table. I think some of the questions were sent asked to Ksenia can also be answered by you. But bear in mind that it's key important for us to try to maximize what we can from this session. We are sitting behind probably the CEOs, both CEOs for the two largest accreditation agencies in the world. Okay, and of course we need a Portuguese to be in the middle, otherwise it doesn't work. This is clear. That's why the general chair of the United Nations is Portuguese, because you always need a Portuguese to handle this kind of big countries. So, Michael, starting now with you. We've seen, actually both of you in different occasions told me the importance is not about accreditation. It is the process of quality assurance, the continuous quality assurance. So you both told me that in different occasions. But the key important are, of course, the stakeholders. Some of the questions are directed to the stakeholders. And Ksenia already answered that. Can you tell us a little bit more, for the ABET point of view, the importance of the stakeholders in accreditation?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So as I mentioned to a few of you during break, and I think maybe even in my introduction about ABET was founded 85 years ago by industry, okay? And the industry people, realized the need to have some consistent level of quality so they could hire capable graduates. And again, I showed you the website there that had that. One of the stakeholders that I did want to address is that of students, and we heard a little bit about student involvement in the European system. So ABET does it a little bit differently. We, as part of our process, we interview students. We, bring them together, determine what part of their experience is very good, what perhaps could be improved on, like do they have access to faculty, what about resources, laboratories, and so forth. Where we don't involve them in the same way as in the decision-making process, all right? So when programs finally get to the point and there's a decision being made to accredit a program or not to be accredit a program, we don't involve students as peers, okay? Primarily because at that point we don't see them as peers. They don't have the level of experience that our experts have. They don't have the training. And I would also argue that maybe they just don't have the maturity in terms of the level of decision making that's required, because it's very serious. And we've found that involving the students on the input side in terms of determining what their view of the program is and so forth is the appropriate level. So that's a bit different in terms of the stakeholders. Certainly faculty, there's the question about faculty, involving faculty. All faculty need to be involved all the time, and otherwise your system doesn't work. One of the challenges that we find when we go to different parts of the world and we look at systems is there's this sort of a relationship where certain colleges are affiliated with other colleges. And basically what this means is that there's a main university campus, and somewhere geographically separate they'll have a college that will be offering programs, but that college doesn't have any control or any ability to change their own curriculum or have any direct effect on that program. It's the main campus that does. Those affiliated programs couldn't be accredited under the ABET system, because one of the things that we require is that the program and the faculty have to have control of their program. Okay? So, for example, if I'm a faculty member and I'm teaching a course and it's obvious through all of my assessment and so forth that there's some aspect of that course that's not working properly, I have to have the ability to have an input to my continuous improvement process that says we need to change. We need to add additional lectures, maybe some additional laboratory time, change the textbook, whatever it is. Okay, so faculty are ingrained; it's part of the system. You can't have faculty sitting on the outside looking in. They have to be part of it. Okay, now that's the challenge for new programs, because the faculty don't understand what's my role. Well, my role is, as part of the team, to participate in the continuous improvement process, to determine how well students are learning, to help build the process, because some of my courses are going to be used to determine whether or not students are successful and so forth. So faculty is extremely important, and they have to be involved. There's no other way to do it. And I would guess that I know for a fact that's true in all our systems. Faculty have to be integrated. The other question, the last question about cost and so forth. So, cost well, first of all, nothing is free, right? Nothing. So you have to, either someone's paying for it. So in our world, we're a non-profit organization, so ABET is not set up to earn a profit. That's our classification. But we have to be self-sustaining. So we actually get funding in 3 different ways. We get funding from our member societies, and I didn't really talk about them yet. I'll talk about them tomorrow. They're the ones that are members of ABET. They're the ones that represent the profession. So they pay us a fee to conduct accreditation. The schools, the universities, the programs that seek accreditation pay a fee. Okay? And then we do some training, which amounts to a little bit of funding, but generally they're self-sustaining as well, so the training we do doesn't really generate much of an income. But that's our system. In other parts of the world, like in Canada, the universities don't pay anything. Okay? The government pays for it. So, but that's the government's choice, and if they want to pay for it, I mean, that's, and it could be in other parts of the world as well. So it just depends on where you are in the world, how that's taken care of. But ultimately, someone has to pay, staff, and they have to pay travel, and they have to pay for, people to be able to get around and so forth. So that happens. The other thing that's important to understand is as a program, if you embark on a continuous improvement process, you're going to incur some indirect costs directly or indirectly because you have to pay for some faculty time to be trained. You have to you'll pay for some training to get your faculty and others trained in best practices for continuous improvement. So there will be some costs incurred, and typically over long periods of time, the majority of the costs are going to be inherent within the program itself, not paying an accrediting agency to come and visit you.
Okay, so let's try to balance a little bit about your question. Well, as you know, I'm from Porto Politécnica in Portugal, and we are the only institution in Portugal actually have both accreditation. We have ABET accreditation, some programs have ABET accreditation, and EURES accreditation. So we know both in the doing. So one of the questions people tell me is, why did you do both? We're not happy with one, did you get to the other? Each one for us had our own specific importance and relevance. So first of all, because we are in Europe and we wanted that the graduates to be recognized and be able to work anywhere in Europe, that's why we went to European accreditation. It allows us to have that. So once our graduates finalize it, they can go to Brussels and get the professional cards, and they can work all the countries, and not having to go country by country by country asking for the permission. So that actually helps us, and that's why currently we are the leading institution in Portland in terms of EURES label accreditation. So we have the most out of that. There is a point until last June, we were the largest accreditation university in Iberian Peninsula, precisely because we were focusing on that one. It was quite curious. But at the same time, we recognized that some of our graduates wanted to go and work in the U.S. So that's why we focus on the programs with those who wanted to go to work in the U.S. and gave them a bad recognition, because that will help them to work and easier to be recognized in the state recognition, professional recognition in the U.S. by having ABET. That's why both were not contradictory, and we go for both. We did not maximize it in terms of ABET because the cost of ABET accreditation at the moment is higher than the European. That's the reason why we couldn't massify it over there. But for us, it was a requirement, and as Michael said, we saw it as to be paid at the end of the day by incorporating the costs of the course itself, and it makes sense. But on other costs, it doesn't make any sense. For instance, mining, we have mining engineering. We would never look for ABET accreditation in mining engineering because our students will never go and do mining in U.S. Well, for the time being, we never know how the things are going to change through the American vision. So, but for you to understand, so these are the two things. But one of the things which you can already start seeing is that the important is not the accreditation itself. It's the quality assurance, as we said. The quality assurance process that you should have inside the institution. Actually, each institution develops their own method, and if they are good enough, it's easier to implement different kinds of accreditation. Because what they are trying to see is if we are actually understanding the problems and trying to solve the problems later on. Okay, continuously. Not just like the day before accreditation comes, let's prepare some reports and let's do something into that. Okay? But now, asking more questions to both of you. You probably have already experienced the understanding of the different cultures around the world. Okay? How would your agencies are handling this situation? How do you handle the situation that if you go to different cultures, different structures, and you might want to land with that? If you come to a Latin culture, for us, starting on time, it's probably not the best description. I'm talking about myself, of course, but not like Germans. But on the other end, we probably are going to have much more fun in our sessions than in some other countries around the world, and we're going to share much openly the problems and the situations. So now starting with you, Ksenia, how would you incorporate this situation, of cultural situation?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, in fact, I was a bit addressing your question in the presentation because, yes, we do understand that cultural aspect is very, very important, and you cannot come just with your rule and say, let's evaluate you. I would start answering your question also focusing that when we're talking about professional accreditation, it is accreditation that is done by peers. It means these are, as we always say, starting the audit, these are the colleagues that have come to your institution for the accreditation. So we are not here to control your educational program. And after our visit and after all the accreditation process, your program will be not closed or your program will not suffer for some limitations. The only output of this process could be the improvement of the quality. And so these are the colleagues, and that's why we always want this procedure to be open, to be built on respect, and to be also built on the understanding and awareness of cultural aspects. But as you can understand, Russia is that far from Latin America, although, as you have seen, we have a lot of contacts with Latin America because we want just to share our experience, and giving just examples from Russia would not work with Latin America. As you have mentioned, they will probably just not come in time for that session. So that is why we took a decision like 3 years ago that we will train experts in Latin America countries. So we will prepare a pool of experts that afterwards could participate in the accreditation process. The only limitation for the moment that we put as a rule that when there is an accreditation, imagine in Argentina, we don't want the observers to be from Argentina. We want the observers from Latin America, but from the other country. So from Colombia, from Chile. So this is one of the ideas that we have to start the process. And afterwards, when we have the active experts, not candidate experts, but active experts that could make a part of the real evaluators team, we want to have these mixed teams accrediting in countries of Latin America. It means that there could be one Russian, one Spanish, one Portuguese, one German, and 2 local experts. So this is the idea. And I think this would be a win-win situation for both, for the agency, because we will have people as experts that really understand what is going in the country now. They know what are the advantages and disadvantages, what are the strong parts and the weaknesses of the educational process here. And also this would be easier for the top management and for the faculties and for students to have these conversations and to have this communication with the peers when they see that Latins are here to support. This is not to control. This is not just to evaluate. This is to support. So.
Well, certainly one of the beauties of international engagement is diversity and learning from one another. So I think that's one of the things that we've really taken advantage of. But with respect to the cultural specificities, one of the things that we're very rigorous about is following a certain process because, for 2 reasons. One is because we know what we can do and how good we can do it, but also so that you know what to expect when we show up on campus. And so part of what we do is we train our evaluators, and by the way, we have about almost 2,300 to over 2,000 evaluators or experts, and about 200 of them come from outside the U.S. So we're getting a larger international pool, but we all train them the same way. We do specific training for our evaluators or experts that go overseas, international, to make sure that they understand if there's any nuances with doing those types of visits, that they understand what those are. Some of the most significant happens at what we call the team chair and maybe the dean or whoever, the rector's in charge of the programs, well in advance. There's lots of discussions before the team even comes into the campus. So much of that discussion, and specifically if there's any kind of cultural differences in terms of some of the formalities are taken care of. One thing I do know is that, especially when we go to some of the Middle Eastern countries, that we change our schedule a little bit to be respectful of any of their days where they're not on campus, they're not teaching, they're not allowed to teach or do business and that type of thing. So that hasn't been too much of an issue. The one thing I would say, though, is we always conduct our reviews in English, okay? And there's two real good reasons for that. First is we don't have the depth of language skills amongst our experts to begin with. We do have some, but we don't have a huge number. But I would say even more importantly, when you read criteria in English, I know for a fact that there's not direct translations in many of the terms. Certainly in Spanish, I've run into that problem myself. I don't know about Portuguese, but I would imagine it would be similar. So if you were to read the criteria in English and then maybe read it in Spanish or Portuguese or some other language, there would actually be some differences and probably be some conflicts. So I think that we're generally been successful because much of the academic world understands English enough to be able to be successful when they go through. So you'll see the criteria in English. The team will speak English, they'll do the review in English, but your instruction can be in whatever language. It can be in Portuguese and Spanish, Russian, what doesn't really matter. We don't require that you instruct in a certain way. That's entirely up to you. When we come to visit you on campus and you go through the review, that's where the English part comes in. So that's important. And then I guess beyond that, we're becoming, we were U.S.-centric, we're becoming much more global. We have many more people involved. As a matter of fact, we have an academic advisory committee that meets with our board a couple times a year. And two of those members one is from Mexico and one is from Colombia. So we have a Latin America presence on our academic advisory council that works directly with our board of directors. So that part is becoming more international as well.
You want to compliment? Yeah, just a compliment to Michael's response is that I confirm and totally support what Michael says about the procedure and about the criteria. It doesn't matter which country you are doing the accreditation process. It keeps being the same. So it will not change because you are doing this accreditation in other country, other institution, in winter or summer. It is always the same, and it is our responsibility as the accreditation agency to keep very rigorously all these procedures because we are also permanently being evaluated to keep our membership and to keep being full signatories of all those accords that we have mentioned. But in terms of languages, this could be sometimes a problem. As you can imagine, for example, in Russia, we have the Russian language that has nothing to do with Spanish, English, or whatever. This means that all the higher education institutions, they have their documents in Russian language, and we cannot force them to translate everything in English. For example, we cannot force to translate students their final projects into English or whatever. We just ask them to have their abstracts in English, and when they prepare on the self-assessment report, a certain part could be in English, because afterwards we could be also evaluated by other agencies and by the accords to see whether our decision was based on the criteria, whether we were quite rigorous in that. But when we are talking about accreditation outside of the country, we ask this to be done in the language, in English or in Spanish in case of, I do not have still examples of Portuguese, but this is the idea that we always have peers in the expert team that are fluent in the language of the country where we are doing the accreditation process. And it is very, very important because this expert could, without any problem, look through all those documents that the higher education institution have, because of the statuses, of the curriculum. Not all the documents could or should be translated in the language. But we just need to have the tools how to approach these documents and how to evaluate them. That is why, in our case, we take this responsibility and we try to make the teams with the appropriate competencies, the teams of evaluators.
Thank you very much. So now I think we could actually open the floor for some of questions for you for the panel, or comments, of course, some ideas. Before doing that, let me just address something that Achilles said before the break. Yes, so we have a comment there. It has to do with Arcosur and the Mercosur accreditation. Well, I know a little bit about it, and actually been involved somehow in some of the discussions and the limitations that it have in terms of going international. Well, one of them is that they are not really governmental independence in many countries of Mercosur. That means they cannot really participate in the global forums because they are required to be independent organizations. And at the same time, they actually depend a lot on the political moves in the countries, which again, then sometimes there are periods of booming, sometimes periods of really retraction. And it creates a problem to maintain what is fundamental in quality assurance, which is a continuum process altogether. So without trying to evaluate any of the political elements aside, I would say that so far the model itself has to be redesigned. It has to be rethinked, otherwise it will not work. But during that time, what is happening is that countries from this region are either applying to Washington Accord-based accreditation like ABET or to European Eurace-based like in Russian or other European agencies in order to continue. And this probably will help them to understand the future moves. But the political problems exist everywhere. I'm not going to be politically incorrect asking ABAT when would they have Russian advisors and Russia when do they have American advisors. I will not ask this question. But eventually it exists everywhere. So please, sir.
Okay. Technical question. Is the use of modern techniques like project-based learning, for example, is considered in the accreditation?
I will start, if you permit. Yes, the answer is yes, because there is a criterion about the educational process. And of course, when we talk about the educational process, we want to be sure that the modern learning and teaching techniques and tools are implemented within the educational process. And in our case, we always pay a lot of attention on this. And project-based learning, problem-based learning, hands-on practice is very, very important part in the accreditation process. And because this also permits us to have evidences when we evaluate the professional competencies and the soft skills of students. Because when they just show us the final projects of students or the curriculum with the courses, with the names of the courses and the learning outcomes, we need to somehow in these 3 days and of the audit visit and previous self-study report analysis understand whether they could be achieved. And one of the ways how to evaluate that is to know what educational technologies, what learning and teaching tools are implemented in this higher education institution and in this educational program. Because we need to know that students work in teams, that students have good internships at industry, that they have real projects, that they defend their projects at the committee, that they have to communicate, probably that they make these presentations in English. So all this stuff is very, very important and for sure is taken into consideration. After our criteria and our procedures are constantly reviewed in terms of including some new wording if it is required. And probably you are aware of such initiative of CDIO. This means conceive, design, implement, and operate, like a whole life cycle of the engineering technology, engineering product. So this is now also inserted in one of the criteria. So we want to see that future engineers, following the Washington Accord IEA graduate attributes, are ready for professional, independent engineering activity. And without using these new, modern, and adequate educational technologies and learning techniques, it is impossible.
Thank you very much.
Well, okay, exactly what you said, but also, the criteria that we have, and you'll see all the Washington Accord members now have, it's all what we call outcomes-based. And so it used to be that an expert would go around a program and they might have a checklist, and they'll look at how many hours of calculus and how many hours of chemistry and engineering design and so forth. That doesn't happen anymore, okay? Because what the criteria will tell you is that if you look at it, and if you go to the ABET website, or any of our websites, it's pretty, I think you would be surprised how little direction there is. It says students must be able to solve engineering problems. Now, it's up to you to figure out how to teach students to solve engineering problems. And if project-based learning is your best or favored or most effective method, then that's perfectly fine with us. As a matter of fact, one of the examples we use is Olin College in the United States. It was set up, and it was set up, it's not that old, it's only been around for 20 years or whatever, but it was set up specifically on the whole principle of project-based learning, and they've been accredited since they were first able to be accredited. So that there's absolutely no problem with that. As a matter of fact, one of the foundational aspects of our criteria, and even Washington Accord criteria, I can say this generally, is to encourage innovation. Because we all know that education in general and engineering education continually changes, and there's always better ways to do things, and there's always new things to try in terms of pedagogy and other methods. So we even have an award that we give out every year for the most innovative program. So they come to our awards gala, and we make a big deal out of it because we want to set the example that, hey, there are many examples of programs doing a lot of different things. They're successful at meeting meeting what we expect to the standards to be. And again, if you look at the criteria, there's nothing in there. You will not find a single thing in there that tells you how to do anything. It just says students must be able to. So at the end of the time the students graduate, you just have to demonstrate the students can, are they successful at setting up experiments and collecting data and analyzing it? Yes, you need to prove that, but we don't tell you how to do it. It's entirely up to you. And sometimes it's kind of funny because some programs are nervous with that because they think, oh, well, you're not telling us how to do it. Because it's your program, it's not our program. And so you should have the flexibility to build it however you want based on your constituent needs. So, in the U.S., we have a lot of different kinds of universities. We have large research universities, very famous for doing research. We have small teaching colleges that don't have graduate programs but are only focused on teaching. We have faith-based universities that are focused on certain faiths. We have historically black university and colleges that are focused on African Americans. They're all different. They all have different constituents, but they end up producing graduates that are successful in terms of meeting our criteria, and that's fine. It's actually a very big strength is diversity, different kinds of universities.
Very good. Any more questions? Okay, so I would like to point out these two elements which are just presented. Diversity, the innovation besides it, and the concept that accreditation should not change your direction or what you want to teach and how you want to teach it, but basically it's just going to be there to support you to be recognized by what you do and that you do it well, that you do it correctly. The idea of the professional accreditation is basically making sure that you do the right things right. Okay, and I think this is summarized a little bit about what both of you are doing. And of course, I could say for experience, I do not belong to any accreditation agency, that altogether they are very similar all around the world. We're engineers, so let's risk a number. I would say at least 80% of all the accreditations, international accreditation around the world, are basically the same. With then small emphasis on small elements which one considers more important or less important. But that's the same. Living in Europe, we understood by the many accreditation agencies around that diversity was actually a strength, having different visions about the same thing, but all of them abiding by the same guidelines. And this was quite interesting and quite important. Actually, I'm aware that in 2015, there was this document, which was the best practices, which was signed between IEA and EURACE, which basically summarize how they see it together, how to move forward into moving eventually one day to a global accreditation standard and guidelines, which can cover all the regions without any problem. So, is there any other final questions? Achilles, you want to please?
In Brazil, we have a 5 years course of undergraduate engineering. And the US, you have 4 years. And in Europe, you have the Bologna process, 3+2, with the master. And my question is about this diversity. Is difficult to the accreditation process to treat this type of diversity of engineering schools around the world.
Okay, Michael, when you start.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, the Area 1 system is slightly different. I think in Europe, for example, students come in better qualified than maybe in the U.S. because of their additional education at the high school level, so that's something to be considered. There's no, you know, back to the ABEC criteria, there's nothing in there that specifies anything about time, okay? And so I know in many places, what do you call it, the internships is quite is part of their programs, and that's built in, and that extends the length of the program and so forth, but that's all perfectly good. Again, the key is, can you demonstrate that students meet everything that's required by the time they graduate, which is what's in the criteria. So we don't have a differentiation. The only thing that talks about time in our criteria, and this was a holdover from our past criteria, talks a little bit about like a year and a half of mathematics and basic sciences or engineering sciences, and then that's up for you to, that's appropriate to the degree. But beyond that, there's no nothing that requires. We do both. We've done 4-year programs, 5-year programs, and even 3-year. I think in Austria is a 3-year program. Yeah. So we've done all of them.
Okay.
So probably you will be surprised, but in Russia we also have 5-year programs. 5 years. But we have 4-year programs and 2-year programs as well. So probably thanks to that. Yes. Thanks to that. Big country that we live in Russia, we have very different. The diversity is even inside the country. Originally, from the Soviet times, we had the 5 years education of fundamental engineering, and we had really good engineers. That our higher education institutions thought that only 5 years and more are appropriate to prepare a good professional engineer. Then in 2003, Russian Federation joined the Bologna process, formally, officially, and that is the year when the new two-cycle, at that moment, two-tier system appeared of 4 years bachelor programs and 2-year master programs. Okay. But some higher engineering education institutions, and especially some fields of engineering, they decided that it is important for them to maintain 5 years education. Normally, these are the strategic fields of engineering for the country, like space, like power engineering, and still they keep their right of 5 years educational programs in engineering. This number of 5-year programs reduce a lot from year to year because at certain moment they understand they could now change the educational process, and thanks to that, they probably do not need that much hours, that much credits. They just could change the process internally and give it in 4 years, and then, so this will be the bachelor's, and then 2 years. But we passed this in Russia because our industry, from the very beginning, they were not prepared to employ graduates from 4-year programs, the bachelor's. They said that this is unprepared engineers, so they are still not. We passed that, and in 5-7 years, we managed to make really good bachelor programs. In terms of international recognition, for us it is like that. In EURACE system, that we are the full members, we have the right to award the EURACE label for 3 types of programs. Not all the agencies have that right. In our case, we confirmed it. So we can give accreditation, make accreditation and award EURACE label for bachelor, for master programs, and for, as we say, specialist degree program of 5 years. So this is covered. In terms of Washington Accord, that is only recognized in our jurisdiction, we also have the right only to recognize by the moment 5-year programs. Washington Accord recognized only that because of the length of the educational period, and they said that we now know that graduates from the 5-year programs, they achieve those graduate attributes and they are ready for professional engineering activity. But exactly this year, we are now under review, and we applied to recognize the accreditation of our bachelor degree programs because we feel ourselves now much more mature, and we think that our bachelor graduates are also ready to be recognized at the international, at the Washington Accord rules. So I do not know still what will be the result. It will be only in June in London that will be discussed and the decision will be made. But I know that this problem a lot of countries face this problem, and if it is important, we can then share some ideas and some experiences, because in our case we passed that already.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we are almost arriving to the end, although as Latins we do not respect necessarily the beginning of time, we respect meal time. It's quite religious in our sense, and we are approaching lunch. So first of all, let me remind you that Dr. Zaitseva and Dr. Milligan, they both of them are going to have workshops during these days. Dr. Zaitseva will have just after lunch a workshop where she goes deep into the kind of accreditation which they do, and Dr. Milligan will be tomorrow full day. So make sure that you attend them, because you probably learn a lot about these people, not just because of the diversity and the rich experience which they have, but at the same time because they can talk in the first hand about how the things are going around the world. And this is something which I think you're very fortunate to have here, and so on. So for me, it's my last participation in this panel, so I'd like to thank all of you for being here. And it was my pleasure to be with both of you, Michael and Ksenia. And probably we'll see each other somewhere around the world, as usual, in some continent or island or somewhere around there. We never had a meeting in the middle of the one ocean. We have to try one of those. Okay? But thank you very much for being here, and good luck with the rest of your work. Okay? Thank you. Now, Dr. Michael Milligan asked me, because he's not going to be around the full day, and tomorrow is going to be here. Some of you, if you have not managed to get to him tomorrow, you're going to leave a bench of cards, look like card playing, over here, which is business cards. You just remove one and feel free to contact him afterwards. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
Well, where is lunch? Where will you go? Lunch break. Okay, we move. Enjoy your lunch. Bom almoço.
Hope to see you after lunch.
Aqui, se você quer dizer onde é que é depois do almoço, todos já sabem onde é, qual é a sala depois do almoço. A sala do outro janela.
Um recado aí para o pessoal que vai participar do workshop à tarde. Vai ser num outro prédio aqui, que é o Espaço Ocean, no prédio do biênio da Poli. É, no prédio da produção que fica do lado do BIE. Desculpa. Tá bom? Obrigado.
So, yeah, as a way to promote the impression, you could probably do something. So the way we do it is the teams nominate.
The audit teams?
Correct. Yeah, because they come back and they say, hey, we found this really good